Hello, this is a roughly 30 times sped up time lapse of me working on a brand new building. Now let me tell you the mission parameters here. I wanted to make a building that would go into my industrial section in my city that would take up the space of about 1 1/2 base plates and use a lot of light bluish types of colors of pieces because I had a ton of them. So many that they were no longer able to fit into the normal storage space where I keep my pieces of that type of color. So I chose medium azure to be the main color that I wanted to use, and then I picked light tan or just regular tan to be kind of an accent color. I thought that might look a little bit interesting, might work decently well. Didn't want to use too much of one color. This is a very brave color scheme for me because I usually don't go into really bright colors. I need to try using bright colors more frequently because they're interesting and they're different, but it's scary for me to use more, let's say, non-traditional colors, especially in large areas. It's easy to use them for small things, but for big things, it's a big leap. Now, interestingly, as I went through my part collection and at various points through this video, you'll see me bringing pieces out onto the table. It's because I'm diving into the big bin off camera to try to find them. I actually found that medium azure was not the color I had the most of in my bin o lighter bluish colored pieces, especially when it comes to just regular bricks, things to use to build the outer walls of a building. So at some point you'll see me start switching over to medium blue, having to use medium blue as yet another color, another major color, and here it goes right now, just because of the lack of sufficient pieces to, I believe, make the entire structure out of the one main color. That makes it even more of a challenge for me to make something look interesting. That's the bin, so you see it's mostly, well, it's a combination between the medium blue and the medium azure, but there's just not enough medium azure regular bricks for the whole thing. It'll be a challenge to use those two together because they are very different hues. Medium blue is a much more purplish color. It has more red in it, whereas medium azure is a cyan. It's a combination directly between blue and green. You'll see me also doing some experimentation of color between the tan and the dark green. Don't have enough tan pieces, I think, to do all the windows, so I then tried out using sand green because I got an extra brick bank just for parts, and that has a lot of those window pieces in sand green. That's actually an interesting combination between the medium azure and the sand green. Those are actually close-ish because of the quantity of green, but then the sand green and the medium blue makes for a strange but interesting color contrast for me. All of these end up being kind of shallow ocean area, seashore area kind of colors, you know, shallow waters, and then kind of get that sand color from the tan. Wasn't the intention at all, but it's kind of where things have moved. As I continued to dive in to the bucket of parts, I realized that still probably wasn't going to have enough pieces. After all, just in this desire to use up pieces, I wasn't going to have enough to do this entire building. I want it to be at least 2 stories tall. Not super tall stories, though. I'm trying to reduce the overall height of floors that I make for buildings. So I brought in some panel pieces, and also, you know, on the front of the building I was working on earlier, used a lot of door frames with windows in them, and also a couple of actual doors. It's kind of a thing that Lego does themselves on their modular buildings. When you look at the fronts of the buildings, most of the space is actually taken up by windows, not by actual bricks that give you color towards the front. Most of the space is used up by larger pieces, mostly doors and windows. So I kind of dipped into that as a little bit of a cheat technique to use up space. Such an ironic thing to go into this entire project just wanting to use up pieces that I thought I had way too many of. Well, I do have way too many of, but I thought that I had enough of to make the entire building, all the walls practically out of them. Ended up having to be very careful and thrifty with parts. As I go along, you will see some things changed out. Like at some point I change out the sand green again for the tan, just in the corners that have the medium azure, kind of going with the colors that I used in the center, on the front and the back with the panels and the door frames. And then eventually I start putting on these tiles. Now this is where I got to the point where I had the height that I wanted for a single floor, which is not too much. It's definitely a shorter floor, shorter level than I normally do, which is good. Allows me to get to a little bit more of the direction that I want to go in terms of proportions of buildings. But this is where I start kind of figuring out how to seal everything up, get the sides connected. And initially I'll go through one process here. I'm actually connecting all of the front together, and then I'll also connect the sides to themselves. But then I go back, take some of that stuff off, and create more sturdy connections, which include connecting the sides of the buildings to the corners of the buildings, which just requires using some larger plates to make some connections that cannot be seen from the outside. It's important for me to maintain kind of the integrity of color on the outside. I don't want to use the techniques that Lego typically uses for modular buildings, for example, between floors, of just putting down a whole new layer of a different color. Or often they'll use white or gray. Gray is one of the most common ones that they'll use. Sometimes they'll use white as kind of the tile layer between floors if they have a lot of white framed windows. I didn't want to do anything like that. Didn't want to have a major line going through this thing, demarcating the difference between the floors from the outside, especially in the corners. Kind of want to allow that medium azure to flow straight up from the floor to the, from the ground to the uppermost floor, even all the way up to the roof. Got a couple of the larger panel pieces with window openings in them, as you see there, just kind of placed there just to remind myself that I'm going to be using them later. Those are going to be used on the second floor once I get to that. I think they just have the right kind of look. It'll be good to get more windows on the second floor, especially in the back. On the bottom floor, no window, well, almost no windows in the back, very little window coverage. And I also brought in a couple of the rounded 4x4 tiles, the relatively new one, those ones in gray in the middle, just to remind myself that I want to try bringing some rounded elements onto the outside of this building. But that does it for the time-lapse section of this. There we go. This is what it ended up looking like after the first building session. It's interesting, it's scary, like I said, to deal with such bright colors, but I think it's going to be okay. That actually looks more interesting to me from the back, going between the blues and the tan. But we'll have to see where this goes. Next, I need to work on the next floor, and then maybe I'll find that I don't like what I did on the first floor. I'll go back and change some things. We'll see how it goes. Wish me luck. Talk to you again soon.